Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Susan Kunreuther of MasterCard and John Bremen of Towers Watson. And we're talking about a shift to thinking about employees as consumers. Susan, can you kind of start off by talking about this shift at MasterCard for us?
Sure. MasterCard is on a journey, and part of this journey is looking at the powerful mission that we have, which is a world beyond cash, a world where electronic payments make commerce safer, more secure, and accurate. But we also have a very powerful brand, Priceless. The Priceless brand was created 17 years ago, and it's a brand that has made an emotional connection with our consumers. And in HR, we're on a journey, just like MasterCard is. And the journey is we're moving more toward or shifting toward a consumer-driven HR that focuses more on employees as consumers. What we've begun to do is refresh our employee value proposition. What does it mean to work at MasterCard? What we've done is taken this very powerful mission, a world beyond cash, a world with financial inclusion, where 85% of the population today is unbanked. Our journey is to change that and change the world economy, and combine it with our very powerful brand of Priceless, connecting our employees to priceless possibilities. That's what the whole shift to treating our employees as consumers is focused on, bringing those two together into our employee value proposition.
Why is this particularly important? Are there new opportunities that MasterCard has in changing how you're thinking about employees?
Everything is changing at MasterCard, and rapidly. 5 years ago, we were only 5,000 employees. Today, we're 10,000 plus and growing. 5 years ago, we were predominantly US-based. Today, more than 60% of our employees exist outside of the US. So it's all about change. And the change in HR is really focusing on what do we need to do to ensure that we keep up with all this change and that we have the right talent in place.
So what's the impact of this shift on total rewards?
Well, as we start to focus on employees as consumers, the first thing we did was take a step back and say, how do employees view total rewards? It's not the typical way that we total reward professionals view it, where we have all our silos around our programs and all our boundaries. And they don't just view it as compensation and benefits. It doesn't stop there. When employees think about total rewards, it's really everything that the company gives to them that they value. So it goes beyond compensation and benefits. It includes career development, it includes work-life integration, it includes training and learning. So it's much broader. So we had to expand our definition of total rewards in order to really start thinking about it the way employees as consumers would think about consuming our programs and the services we deliver.
Do you feel like that's enhanced that employee value proposition?
I think it will. So we're on a journey, and where we are on this journey is we haven't even launched yet the total rewards piece of this. We have launched the refreshed employee value proposition, where we are now integrating our powerful mission of a world beyond cash and our powerful brand of Priceless.
So, John, there are obviously very large brand implications for MasterCard. Talk a little bit about some of the considerations as an organization attempts to make this shift but stay true to who they are and their brand.
MasterCard is going through a bit of a transformation, even the way the company thinks about itself, as well as articulating that to others. I actually believe that the journey they're taking is very true to their brand. I think their core is just a tremendous global mission that translates very well to both their external consumers and their internal consumers. So I actually believe that by going through this process, they stay true to their brand and then expand the understanding of it, not only inside the organization, but outside as well.
Are there specific things to look for as you go through this shift to make sure that happens? Though I imagine in some organizations that's pretty easy to have good alignment, but in others that might be more of a stretch.
The thing about brand that is true for both the external consumers and the internal consumers is you can't really represent something that is not fundamentally true. You know, brand should bring out our best and most authentic sense of self. And I would just advise any company going through this process not to pretend that they're somebody they're not or something that they're not, but rather to take the best aspects of their mission, of their values, of the strong connections they have to their customers and to their employees into play. I think when companies do that, they find great success. When they stray too far and start, pretending, I think people are pretty savvy, and that's where it starts falling apart.
John, what advice would you give to HR leaders who recognize this need for a shift in thinking about employees as consumers to truly optimize their work, but maybe have a little bit more difficulty in getting that buy-in, which sounds like was very different at MasterCard.
Yeah.
But a lot of organizations, that's something they have to tackle.
It is. And when I'm talking to a CEO, I'll often ask that person how often they spend $3 billion on something without first finding out whether it will work. And the typical response is, well, if I did that too often, I'd be out of a job, right? And the reality is they're doing it every year with their total rewards programs. The typical company with 20,000 employees is spending $3 billion a year on their total rewards programs. And to not have a sense of whether they're working is something that maybe for the last 50 years was acceptable, but for the next 10, it no longer will. With the advances we have in data and technology to measure data, it's almost becoming irresponsible to not understand whether what you're doing is working. And so I'll say to the CEO or CHRO, you're spending $3 billion today. Wouldn't you rather if you could get the same results for 2.8, do that? Or if you can increase your results 20% by spending 3.1 billion, and that tends to resonate. What if you learned you were spending $100 million on a program that was not having the effect you wanted, and you want to substitute it out? So by treating employees as consumers, you really understand how to optimize that spend in total rewards. And then more broadly, what you also get is employees who are more engaged, more productive, more customer focused, and ultimately stay longer and are more productive in that time. That's a pretty compelling calculus for most senior executives as they think about it. The single greatest pushback or concern we get when we talk about this to executives is, boy, if we ask employees a bunch of questions about what they want and we can't deliver it, we're going to be really sorry we asked. And my advice to those companies is it's always better to know than to not know. But the companies who have really done this well have prefaced the messages to their employees as they're asking as, you're really important to us. We value your opinion tremendously. We're on a journey, just as Susan said. We may not be able to give you everything you've asked for. It may take us 5 or 7 years or even never to get to some of these places. But it's important for us to know where you stand so we can incorporate that into our thinking and for us to do what we can relative to what you want. Because I think at the end of the day, companies would rather meet the needs of their employees. When they don't, it's because they can't or they can't afford it, not because they don't want to.
So talk about the importance of an employment brand. We talked about a brand for an organization, and I think we all recognize how critical that is for success. But we're hearing more and more about this employment branding and how that strategy works to really enhance and solidify the employee value proposition.
I think that for years, the typical chief human resource officer thought of himself or herself really as the chief program officer of the organization. I think for many years, if you had the best compensation program, the most competitive benefits program, something unique, that in itself was enough to differentiate us from our competitors. I think in today's world it's different. Today's CHROs are fashioning themselves more as the chief employee experience officer, whose job it is to weave together a differentiated employee experience from their competitors for talent to not only attract their employees, but also to engage them and really take them to a higher level. And I think that's a mission that a lot of the CHROs who I talk to these days have taken on, and I think it really can elevate not only the value of the employee value proposition or the brand, but to the employee sense of themselves, and that's pretty cool.
What does the employment brand explicitly do in this overall effort to create an engaged, productive workforce that you can retain?
It's a great question. I think what it does is it really weaves together all of the different messages. Just as an external brand takes a lot of the complicated and often nuanced messages of a product or a service, right? Whether it's a minivan, whether it's a professional service, whether it's a piece of technology, whether it's a soft drink, whether it's a piece of furniture, right? It's really hard to explain all of that in a couple words, right? But a brand brings that together and explains it and creates that lasting connection with the consumer. The same exact thing is true for a total rewards program or an employee value proposition. We have all these messages that we send to our employees. They sometimes conflict, they're sometimes confusing, they're sometimes very nuanced, they're sometimes very technical, but if we can bring it down to that emotional connection, that visceral response so that they understand it, they think, wow, these people really understand me, this company really understands me, and this place is for me, that is worth a tremendous amount of goodwill and leads to tremendous engagement and ultimately productivity and performance for the organization. The reason we do this is to get higher performing, more engaged employees, and brand can really be central to doing that.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It
How
is.
does an organization balance the work on brand with the business needs?
One of the most important pieces of advice we give is you can't substitute a brand for sort of poor programs. We cannot take our eye off the ball, and this is essential for compensation and benefits professionals and work-life professionals and total rewards professionals. We can't take our eye off the ball. We have to continue to deliver the same kind of innovative, top-quality, competitive programs, technically disciplined programs that we always have. That doesn't change. But what does change is our ability to really think of them at a higher level and have a greater point of connectivity. It also means this doesn't happen overnight. As you heard from Susan, it's a journey at MasterCard. Every company we're working with on this is experiencing that. It takes a long time. They didn't develop their external brands in a day either. It often took years or decades or generations. MasterCard's priceless brand was not thought of overnight either, nor was its usage even understood originally. And so I think from that perspective, we have to be patient. This doesn't happen in a single fiscal year. It doesn't happen in a single plan year. It's a journey over time. And some people worry, well, gee, that sounds like a lot. It is, but you got to get started at some point. And any work you do on it this year, even if it's only a little, is still more than you'll have if you don't do anything.
Thank you both. For World at Work TV, I'm Allison Avalos.